Okay, to illustrate one of the overarching themes of this video, in the bottom right corner, I'm gonna have a clip of me walking in a straight line on a planet on Starfield the whole time. Pause the video and comment with the timestamp when you see something fun. So Starfield came out a little over 4 months ago, and it might surprise you to learn that more people are playing Skyrim on Steam. In fact, when I checked the Steam charts for the last 30 days whilst editing this video, Skyrim Special Edition, that's right, one of these Skyrim editions, was sitting at an average of 19,524 players. Fallout 4 was sitting at an average of 15,183 players, and Starfield was only at an average of 11,232, with its peak amount of players still being lower than Skyrim's average at 19,200. Which means my opinions for the next 10 or so minutes might actually have some sort of weight to them. Okay, before we go any further, I should probably tell you about my experience playing Starfield, so you don't think I played it for 1 hour and then cried for 10. So I played Starfield all the way through. I put over 300 hours into it. I made content on it. I glitched it to hell. And to be honest, I think my overall experience was pretty similar to most players. I jumped into the character creation menu and I was really excited to get going in this beast of a game. I love Bethesda games, so I knew I was going to love every second of Starfield. Everything was pretty linear at the start and was going well. I met some interesting characters, found out I was the chosen one, and even learned about a new religion along the way. But then, the game made its first mistake. It opened up, giving me that free reign to go wherever I wanted, a literal universe at my fingertips. Want to go to this planet? No problem. Want to go to that moon? Easily done. Want to do something fun? No! That's right, I learned very fast that as soon as the guardrails came off and God Howard released me into the wild, there was nothing. It was like one of those walking simulators, only this walking simulator had something the others didn't. But none of this was enough to stop me. I was determined to have a good time. And to be fair, in some parts I did. But after having some time away and being able to reflect on my relationship with Starfield, I realized it was a quick fling that showed me how shallow it was. It ruined what we had by opening up to me, and now I can't stop wishing it was more like its older, better-looking sister Skyrim. And that painfully shoehorned analogy is a perfect segue into the rest of the video. So maybe some people out there will be thinking, hey, random glitching channel, what do you know? I actually enjoyed Starfield. And to that I say, you have a good point. So I wanted to take some of my criticisms of God Howard's ugly new baby and compare it to some of the Bethesda greats. And hopefully, by the end of this, we'll all agree that I made a good video and you should subscribe. I mean, ask yourself this. Would you buy a Starfield Legendary Edition next year? And then, would you buy a Starfield Special Edition 3 years after that? Would you then get the Starfield Anniversary Edition to celebrate 10 years of Starfield? And would you get it for your Switch and on VR? And remember that tongue-in-cheek Alexa version of Skyrim? How would the Starfield version of that go?
You land on a planet, what would you like to do?
Head north.
You walk for 10 hours and see nothing, what would you like to do?
I don't know. Use the scanner to find a POI?
You find a POI on your scanner, you spend another 14 hours walking towards it, it's trees. You found trees.
This actually segues quite nicely into my first point that I'd like to moan about. What's with all the emptiness? I would have taken a space adventure where you jump between 2 or 3 planets doing missions if it meant at least one of them had something interesting on it. Bethesda, rocks aren't a point of interest. Nobody is interested in rocks.
They're minerals.
So let's take a look at a side-by-side clip of a long walk in a straight-ish line on Skyrim and Starfield, and then I'll throw in some Fallout. Oh look, we already have a Starfield clip right here in the corner. Perfect.
That's close enough.
And there you have it, emptiness. Even when Skyrim and Fallout had quiet moments, it still looked interesting and it felt like something was about to come running at you from behind a building or a tree. The sky does look incredible in Starfield, but you can also see for miles, so nothing would be able to really surprise you. Even if there was a Khajiit bandit waiting to steal my coin purse, I could literally see him from the other end of the planet. I think the long, boring, empty walks could be somewhat alleviated if we had some kind of buggy to drive around in. I mean, we had a horse in Skyrim and Oblivion. You could even argue that we eventually got dragons to ride in Skyrim, but they weren't really a great mode of transport. But it's just wild that a game as big as Starfield doesn't offer us a faster mode of transport than our legs or a jetpack feature that is basically a glorified double jump button. Especially as the fast travel system is so slow as well. Fast traveling to your ship to travel to your actual destination is painful. So one of the things I loved about Skyrim and Fallout as well actually is the chaos that would happen without me instigating anything. Whenever I was setting out to do a quest or get a small task done, I'd find myself getting sidetracked just watching an NPC being rude to somebody. And then I'd just sit and watch how it all unfolds. Some NPCs start kicking off and others would run away screaming. Guards show up and sometimes I had to reload the game because an NPC I wasn't sure I needed later just got killed. And then there were other instances where I'd see a dragon swoop down and pick up a mammoth, which started a fight with a giant, only for all three of them to turn around to me as if they just joined forces. But I didn't really get any of that from Starfield. Sure, you're in a spaceship and a bounty hunter will stop you just before you fly off. And that's good, it does mix things up, but also feels very scripted. It doesn't have that element of chaos. I mean, look at Fallout. That game is 90% chaos. You could walk out of a building and be swarmed by mutants, rad roaches, a deathclaw, or just blow up at any moment by stepping on a well-placed landmine. I mean, that bit where that giant comes out of the lake, I think his name was Swan. Oh, Swan Lake, I just got that. Well, that really caught me by surprise and was one of the moments in gaming that really stuck with me. Another moment that stuck with me for an entirely different reason was when you leave the sewers for the first time in Oblivion and get hit with that incredible view. And if anyone has had a genuine moment like that in Starfield, please share it in the comments. I would love to hear about it. You know what? I'd argue that both Skyrim and Fallout actually feel bigger than Starfield. I go back to Skyrim quite often, usually because I'm making videos, but sometimes I'll come across a building I've not been in before, and inside is a whole ass quest line about something crazy, like a Daedric artifact, a curse, or vampires. But even though technically there's still hundreds, if not thousands more places I haven't visited in Starfield, it kind of feels like I already have. I go to a new planet, and this planet is a little cold, but it still has a bunch of plants and also a bunch of creatures. Or a little less creatures, or a little more plants. It's all the same. There's a POI on this planet, but on further inspection, it's a settler camp, but not one of those cool ones in Fallout that you have to protect, then build up, recruit others, connect a supply route, and get rewarded with loot. No, it's one of those settler camps where everyone is dead, or they might as well be because they won't talk to you. But at least this planet has rock POIs to find, right? So I'm of course very aware that a lot of people are still enjoying this game. I mean, did I mention the 11,000 players last month? But there are probably people out there that enjoy having this monstrously large universe to explore. But I do wonder if these same people would trade out their giant empty sandbox for something smaller if it meant they didn't have to sit through a minimum of 4 loading screens every time they set off for a different location. In fact, let's do a little test. I'll travel from New Atlantis to Venus in Starfield, and then I'll travel from the Arcane University in the Imperial City all the way to Leowyn Castle in Oblivion, just so we can see how far backwards we've gone in terms of wait times. Can 2023's Starfield keep up with 2006's Oblivion? Find out after this.
clear. Time to land this ship.
Glorious as always.
So I knew the footage was going to be bad, but I genuinely didn't know it would be that bad. But in all fairness to Starfield, it does have a lot of rocks to load in. I have no idea what happened to the NPCs in Starfield, but the quickest way to get pulled out of any immersion you may have had in this game is when you try to chat with a random NPC. They don't even talk to you. 80% of them have the name Resident or Survivor or something like that, and they will do nothing when you click on them. I would take 100 Nazeems mocking me about the Cloud District over this.
Do you get to the Cloud District very often? Oh, what am I saying? Of course you don't.
Still no idea why he does that. He sleeps above a pub with his wife in the Plains district of Whiterun. So what the hell is he talking about? But this is the thing. I hate Nazeem. He makes me feel something even though he's a nothing NPC with a couple lines of sarcastic dialogue. But I'd still love to climb through my monitor and punch a hole in his face. Saying that, these NPCs who ignore my existence are very close to getting the same treatment. Even the characters in Skyrim just named Farmer will still say something to you. Most of the time they say something that isn't even directed at you, and then boom, all of a sudden you have a small task to, I don't know, kill a rival farmer. I mean, probably not that, but you can go do that if you want, and then you'll hear that NPC's family mourning for them. Let's see what happens when you kill a random Starfield NPC's family. Oh right, you can't tell who's related to who in this game because every non-essential character won't talk to strangers. So whilst we're discussing NPCs, one of the things I'd love to see come to Starfield, and to be honest, I haven't gone back to it in a while after getting my footage for this video, so they might have included something like this in an update. But I'd love to see creatures floating around in space. Not just pirates or starborn ships, but I mean like a giant space whale that could be anywhere in the universe at any point. The idea sort of reminds me of playing Valheim for the first time and seeing that serpent monster show up in the deeper parts of the ocean, and you are sweating in a tiny boat just trying to haul back 8 hours of loot and praying he doesn't hit you too hard. I think this would definitely help with my previous issue about the lack of chaos in this game. And Bethesda, if you're watching this, you can have that idea. But please name the whale Liam. So this might be a controversial take for anybody that isn't part of my community, but come on Bethesda, don't patch out the fun glitches. Jumping under the map to get money and ammo was so handy. Just seeing the community come up with creative ways to get around the tight restrictions the game had was a thing of beauty. And this isn't a new thing. Skyrim and Fallout are infamous for the endless amount of glitches and exploits. And let's be honest, the glitches and mods keep the players interested. I mean, my channel is 90% glitches for Skyrim, Fallout, Diablo, Dark Souls, and so many more. But for every incredible glitch video with a handsome voiceover, there's always at least one or just play the game comment. So I guess there are people out there that don't want players exploiting games, even if it doesn't affect them. Okay, so I think it would be a little unfair to compare Starfield weapons with Skyrim because, well, a pistol just doesn't even touch a chaotic staff that turns enemies into random creatures and items. But of course, this is where we can focus our attention to Fallout. Because we're kind of running similar weapons in a sense, both Starfield and Fallout have your sniper rifles, assault rifles, SMGs, shotguns, and melee weapons. And that actually brings me on to my first point. Starfield has 9 melee weapons. You've got the Barrow Knife, Combat Knife, Rescue Axe, Rip Shank, Tanto, UC Naval Cutlass, the Wakizashi, the Osmium Dagger, and the Varoon Pain Blade. Now, you're obviously going to have the different variations of those weapons with different abilities, but these 9 melee weapons are the only base melee weapons. Fallout 4, on the other hand, has 22 bladed weapons, 26 blunt weapons, one of which is named the Commie Whacker, and then it also has 5 unarmed melee weapons, like boxing gloves, knuckle dusters, and so on. Now, in Starfield's defense, some of Fallout's weapons did come with DLC, so it's not completely fair to compare 9 weapons to 53. So instead, let's look at how a few of these weapons handle. Take Starfield's Combat Knife, for example. When you use it like this, it's pretty fast, as you should, in theory, be able to swing such a small weapon. And Fallout 4 also has a combat knife, and yes, you can move it pretty fast. But look what happens when we move to a heavier weapon. This is Starfield's UC Naval Cutlass. For some reason, nothing about the speed changes. It's still just as fast. Now, either this guy is so strong that he can swing a big sword in the exact way he swings a dagger, or some corners were cut. And just to add salt to the wound, here's a slower and more thought out animation when swinging heavier weapons in Fallout 4. As for the guns, I actually think the mechanics are pretty decent. I'm somebody that plays a lot of Call of Duty and Apex Legends, so the way the shooting feels is always a big deal for me in these games. For example, when Cyberpunk first dropped, I couldn't get past the first couple of missions just because aiming felt like I was back playing Medal of Honor in 2010. But as for Starfield, it was pretty clean. However, the guns are insanely generic, especially when you put them up against some of Fallout 4's guns. Look, I'm not asking for Borderlands level of gun design, where you have a gun that shoots smaller guns or a gun that likes being a gun, but I was hoping for at the very least some Skyrim level of fun and chaos. Give me a gun that slows down time on one NPC and let me walk around plucking all of their fired bullets out of the air, or a gun that has a magnet feature that collects all of the bullets so I can fire them back in a crazy barrage, sort of like that pinball minigame in Crash Bash on PS1. But yeah, weapons were alright, but personally for me, they didn't come close to Fallout 4, and that's without even talking about the VAT system. Okay, so I only had a few small issues with building out your character in Starfield, but I did think it would be fun to see how some of the favorite build styles from Skyrim stack up in Starfield. Like, most of us that play Skyrim have made a stealth build at some point, right? And then of course you've got the warrior who would go in guns blazing. And then I guess we'll go for a mage in general because we can't really get too specific in a world that doesn't have actual magic. So I went for the stealth build first, and the first thing I noticed was that whilst you get equipment to wear that contributes to stealth in Starfield, you don't really look the part. Another weird issue I had was when you've got that chameleon effect, everything turns invisible when you stand still, meaning your gun and the scope you're aiming through does too. So I found myself having to wiggle to bring my scope back just so I could take a shot with my sniper. The stealth build isn't awful in Starfield, and there are a lot of skills that really stack, giving you that one-shot ability. But the biggest issue, for me at least, is there are no takedown animations. If you take a shot from miles away, it won't do that cool slow mechanic that you see in the other games. Which also means if you sneak up behind an NPC with a knife, you're just gonna have to clumsily slash the air until they drop. But don't worry, you can use a big sword to take them down quicker with no cost to the slashing speed whatsoever. I feel like there's not much that needs to be said about Skyrim when talking stealth builds. Maybe just watch this clip. For the warrior build, it's pretty self-explanatory. You can run in guns blazing, and again, the game has perks and abilities to help you maximize your warrior. You can dish out damage to multiple enemies quite easily in Starfield, but I wouldn't say you could stand there and take as many hits. There is a pain tolerance perk to help you tank and ignore more damage, but not to the extent that Skyrim goes. Leveling up the light or heavy armor skills and utilizing the full set bonus in Skyrim, and then upgrading your actual armor is just another level of tanking. Not to mention the spells you can use to further buff yourself as well. But I'd say this is still probably the build where Starfield shines the most. And then finally, the mage build. You can't really be a space wizard in Starfield, but the powers you get from collecting artifacts are fun to play around with in combat. Unfortunately, there's a big wait time in between using them, and I know it's exactly the same as Dragon Shouts in Skyrim, but the difference there is I could blast my enemies with destruction magic or raise their dead friends to fight for me whilst I waited for Fusro Dar to come back. I'm gonna say the mage build is pretty non-existent in Starfield, which isn't a bad thing. The game just wasn't built with that in mind, and neither was Fallout, even though Reddit would say otherwise. I think overall the builds in Starfield are a bit of a blurred line. It's more of a on-the-fly choice. You want to go in stealthy, so you swap to your silent pistol. You don't really build around it because I'd argue that the skill trees aren't really set up for that. And I think maybe it could just be me because some of the skills are pretty similar. For example, leveling up my assault rifle proficiency in Starfield was just like, cool, now I can pull out that gun in a fight and I'll do better damage. But it didn't mean I'd use it any more than I was. But leveling up two-handed weapons in Skyrim felt like a commitment to that class of weapon. I was now the two-handed weapon orc, and I'd build everything around my giant axe. Okay, just to be fair, I'll give Starfield a few points because even though it sounds like it, I didn't hate playing it. The story was interesting in places, like the mission that had you jump in dimensions, and the shipbuilding was cool. I feel like the shipbuilding was actually where you saw that typical Bethesda community shine, where they were just making crazy structures. I saw a few Star Wars ones, I think I saw a giant burger, and that scorpion-shaped ship was insane. Of course, players had to break the game with mods to achieve this, but I mean, like we said, that's what this community is known for. Over here, we glitch the hell out of games, and that's the kind of stuff I like seeing the community doing. Working together to find better ways to beat a boss. Or, in Starfield's case, finding better ways to beat boredom. But anyway, as for where it shines, where the twins don't, I think that New Game Plus twist was a lot of fun. It actually almost tricked me into going back and playing the story again. I liked flying around in 0 Gs, and I liked the fact that loot has a rarity ranking. Starfield is by no means a terrible game. I mean, it wasn't even close to being the worst game of 2023. Especially when we had Gollum and Rise of Kong, but I'd argue that it's nowhere near top 5 in Bethesda's back catalogue. And although it's not that deep and I can just go play Skyrim and Fallout and leave Starfield to the fanboys, it was still worrying to see Bethesda actively clap back to criticism with gems like, some of Starfield's planets are meant to be empty by design, but that's not boring. And also, when the astronauts went to the moon, there was nothing there. They certainly weren't bored. Yeah, but just because I enjoy bowling in real life doesn't mean I wasn't bored out of my mind when I had to play it with Roman in GTA 4. But yeah, this response kind of worries me for the upcoming Elder Scrolls game. I get it, defending the game you've spent years on makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'll probably do the same on this video when it gets horrible comments. And that's only for a couple months' work. And to be fair to Bethesda, I bet most of the negative reviews were probably incredibly rude and unfair, as is what you can expect from the internet. But as I said, it's also worrying because this sort of doubling down on the emptiness and the mechanics that players aren't enjoying kind of looks like they aren't taking the comments into consideration. Like, if all my comments on this video are never do an essay video again, stick to glitches, you're literally called gaming exploits for fuck's sake, I'd be pretty stupid to then get to work on my next video essay. I don't know, maybe if we all pray to the almighty God Howard together, he'll come down and promise that we'll get more than rock POIs in the next Elder Scrolls. Who knows? Subscribe and thanks for watching.
You keep walking. Nothing. You walk some more. Nothing. You find rocks again. You keep walking. Nothing. You walk some more. Nothing.